So St. Patrick's Day obviously comes once a year. There's lots of saints that are celebrated, but St. Patrick seems to be right up there in the top two. I suppose St. Nick's the other one on Christmas Day. But you know, the story of St. Patrick is an amazing story. He came to Ireland to preach the gospel. He was in a country that was totally secular. There was a high king who had all his druids and all those guys who worshipped mystical things, and St. Patrick wanted to bring the truth and the freedom of the gospel. And so you think back on that. That's 1500 years ago. It changed our country's destiny. And the whole idea of the gospel is that there's no such thing as an outsider. There's no such thing as, this exclusive little club. But the gospel in essence says that God became one of us. When Jesus died on the cross, he tore the divide between the Holy of Holies and mankind. When Jesus walked on the earth, he pushed past all of those social parameters, and he moved towards the people who were marginalized, the tax collectors, the prostitutes, the sick, the poor, even the rich. Jesus went to all of those different brackets. The only ones he really told off were actually the religious ones, who were more worried about protecting their religion than they were about loving their fellow man. And so when St. Patrick came to Ireland and was telling that story, how could that not be anything but good news? How could that not be anything but freedom? And there's a really amazing story that once a year the High King in Ireland, he ruled the whole land. He had a rule which was for one night and one night only, he was the only one who was allowed to have a fire. And that they would look across the whole island, all of his rulers, all of his smaller kings would keep an eye across the whole island to make sure that no one else lit a fire, so that everyone knew that the High King was the deity, the High King was the most important person, and that everybody else had to remember that they were worth nothing and that they were under his feet. And the whole idea that there's important people and then there's not important people didn't fly with St. Patrick, because he knew that Jesus was the only High King. That's why whenever he penned the song Be Thou My Vision, which we call You're My Vision, when he penned that song, the whole essence is that he is the High King of heaven. He is the High King, not any man. There is no government, there is no man in charge, but that God is in charge. So he actually decided, you know what? I'm going to light my own fire and protest against this. I'm going to get up on the highest hill there is and I'm going to light a fire. And so he did. He lit that fire, and of course it wasn't long before he was found. He was dragged in front of the High King and he was about to be executed. And before he was executed, he got up and he said, wait a second, I want to tell you about the real High King. I want to tell you about Jesus. So he preached the gospel to the High King, and at that stage no one was allowed to share any other message except the message that the High King allowed. And that day the High King was so moved that he decided he would allow Patrick, not St. Patrick at that stage, which is always important to remember. You're never a saint until you're gone. Sometimes you have to live like a saint even if no one calls you one. But Patrick decided that was his moment. He shared the gospel, and the High King allowed him to preach this good news throughout the island of Ireland. And so, where we live right near a town called Downpatrick, which is where he was buried. We live right beside all the different places that he came and visited. There's so many stories, and it's kind of really exciting that we get to be a part of that we as Rend Collective now 1500 years later get to worship the real High King because of what St. Patrick did.